Assalamu alaikum Bliifians, I'm Asma and you're watching Bliifee, where I share Muslim life hacks from my life as a Muslim in Australia. And in this video we will be looking at 5 questions that you should be asking your potential employer at an interview before they hire you. Now you see, an interview is not just about your potential employer getting to know you and to see if you are a perfect fit for them, but also the other way around, to find out whether the company is suitable for you or not. So here are 5 questions that you should be asking to gauge whether that company is good for you as a Muslim. So let's get right into it. The first thing that we need to ask about, especially if your company offers you food, for example at a canteen or at events, if you're joining a corporate company, then there will be so many opportunities for you to have food. So for that, you will need to ask if the food that they provide over there is catered or is suitable for a halal diet. All you have to do is wait for the end, or you can even ask these questions in the middle of your interview if it comes up at any point. When they ask you, do you have any questions for us? These are the questions you should ask on top of the questions that you already have for them. So number 1 is asking them about halal food. This is also applicable when it comes to corporate environments or any environment that takes you to outside restaurants for celebrating any team achievements, etc. So when I was working at a corporate company, they would usually take us or order from outside, and that would not be halal. So to avoid any disappointments, make it clear up front that you have a dietary requirement and that is halal. So they will keep that in mind whenever they have such meetings, hopefully, inshallah. Question number 2 that you should be asking your potential employer at an interview is the acceptability of a Muslim. So for us hijabis especially, ask them how do hijabis integrate into the culture? What is the attitude like? Do they have existing hijabi employees already? How are they feeling like? Etc. And you can also add on, now this is not just for hijabis but also for Muslim men, to place a boundary about your physical connection with your colleagues. So especially when it comes to handshakes. And if you want some tips about that, I have a video on how to avoid handshakes, especially in the workplace. So check that out after this one, inshallah. You can also ask how this would be respected in the workplace, especially if your work involves meeting clients outside of your workplace. Question number 3 that we all should be asking, and this is a very, very important one, is related to prayer timings. Our fard prayers are very important. They are prayers that should be done on time, no matter what. Okay, there are only 2 excuses we can have for missing our fard salah, and that is forgetfulness, like genuine forgetfulness, and sleep. These 2 are the only excuses. No other excuse counts. Not that you were working, not that you are outside, not that you have najasa on yourself. None of this excuse counts. Okay, as far as I know. I'm not a scholar, but this is what I know and this is what I follow. To make prayer your top priority, no matter what, even at your workplace. Now, I know there are certain workplaces which I don't have any idea about, such as health workers, nurses, doctors, surgeons, etc. I am going to be honest here, I have absolutely no idea about this. So if this is your case, please consult a scholar, a sheikh, a mufti, somebody who will be able to give you authentic advice on this. But for those of us who work in non-emergency environments, where there is no life and death situation, then I would say prayer is your top priority and treat it as such. You might think, what about the boss? What would your boss think? But I would say that Allah is our biggest boss. And He is the bosses of bosses. Like, no other boss is bigger than Him, alright? So if He has set a timing for you to pray, that is a timing we pray. We don't say, oh no, I'm going to go home and make up all my prayers at once. Because I used to do that at one point. I didn't know. Now that I know, the timings for Asr, for Dhuhr, for Maghrib, for Isha, for Fajr, all of these timings are set by Allah, and we don't get to change that at all. Like I mentioned, the only 2 reasons we have for missing them are forgetfulness and sleep, nothing else. So make sure that you ask about your prayer timings to your boss or your person, who's interviewing you. Make it clear to them that praying on time is important for you as a Muslim. And in Australia, it is important that employers give you this opportunity to pray on time, and so because otherwise it counts as discrimination. That is part of the Australian law, or at least the Victorian law. So depending on the timings of your shift, whether they're morning shift, afternoon shift, night shift, whatever salah timings coincide with your shift timings, make sure you ask about that to your employer and ask what arrangements they already have in place for the employers who are Muslim and who pray on time. And if they don't, then ask them what can they do in that. So for example, I was attending an interview for a train driver and I asked them, look, I have these prayers that need to be prayed on time. How can I make sure that I pray this on time as a train driver? Do I get to take breaks? Do I have to make sure that my shifts don't coincide with my prayer timings? Do I get to pray on the train? What is that like? I don't know what the scenario looks like. So that's why it's important you ask these questions. And also, if your company is going to have meetings, it's a corporate environment, ask them how flexible they are with prayer timings. Ask them if they can move around meeting timings to make space for your prayer timings. Ask them if there is a prayer space. Ask them if there are anything that you need to keep in mind before you go to pray, before you take a break. Can you take a break when it's time for you to pray, or do you have to make sure that's all done within the break that is given to you? So all of these questions surrounding your prayer timings, surrounding your prayer places, and anything else that's related to prayers, make sure you ask this during the interview so that you don't have to deal with any disappointments, and vice versa, they don't have to deal with your preferences later on. You make this clear upfront and mention this upfront so that they have everything ready for you. They are prepared for it. You are prepared for what's coming, inshallah. Number 4, now this is for the brothers. Again, related to prayers, but more specifically related to Jumu'ah prayers. Jumu'ah is not fard on women, so that is not a problem for us. But for men, it is fard on you guys every week. So you ask your potential employer what arrangements they already have in place for existing employees for prayer breaks every Friday for you to go to the masjid and pray Jumu'ah prayers. How to do it. Now, inshallah, I will have a video coming up on this, on how my brother, my father, and my husband pray Jumu'ah and make arrangements for it at work. But inshallah, this is a question that you should be asking your potential employer to make sure that everything, again, all expectations are set in place and you've got all arrangements set up beforehand. So find out if you have a masjid nearby, find out whatever you need to find out about Jumu'ah and ask about that to your employer, inshallah. Now, when it also comes to halal food, you will also want to ask about the alcohol culture. Alcohol culture is a big thing in Australia. It is part of the Australian culture in a huge way. So I personally did not know how integrated it is into the workplace culture as well. When I was working at a corporate workplace, alcohol was present at every party and at every meeting after 5 p.m. So once 5 p.m. was done, that was called the happy hour, even at workplaces. So now I did not know how strong the alcohol rulings were back then in terms of Islam. But now that I follow this opinion that we should not even be sitting on the same table as somebody who's drinking alcohol, I would make sure that I ask this question whenever there is any potential of alcohol being involved in the workplace culture. You can also ask about how alcohol is involved in your workplace in terms of production, if that's the area that you're going to be working in, or any haram ingredients being used in the production or manufacturing of any product that you're working on. So that's about halal in terms of eating, working with, and dealing with in terms of colleagues. Inshallah, make sure to ask this question. Question number 5. Now, this is too early for me to mention this, but also whenever it is appropriate, if you are going to be having an interview closer to Ramadan, then this is a question that you would want to ask early on. Or it's also a question that you can ask once you get hired, because Ramadan is inshallah 6 months from now, but you would want to ask this question if your work is going to be impacting your Ramadan routine in any way, shape or form. For example, if you're working a night shift, how would your night shift be worked around to deal with Taraweeh? Or vice versa, how are you going to deal with Taraweeh if your work timings are coinciding with that? How are you going to deal with meetings if you're fasting? Would you be able to go back home early if you skip your lunch break because you're fasting and you're not eating? You know, all of these kind of questions, inshallah, we can have this covered in another video closer to Ramadan, but this is a question that you might want to ask if you're watching this video later on. So these are the 5 questions. Number 1, to ask about halal food, halal stuff, alcohol culture, etc. Number 2, the question you would need to ask is about the hijab culture, the Muslim culture, the handshakes, the physical involvement, etc. Number 3, you would want to ask about prayer timings, prayer arrangements, prayer prayer places, meeting timings that coincide with that. Number 4, you would want to ask about Jumu'ah prayers if you are male. Number 5, you would want to ask about Ramadan and stuff related to that, inshallah. So these are the 5 questions you would want to ask at an interview as a Muslim before you join any workplace, to make sure that it is suitable for you to work with them, not only them working with you. Now, you might be thinking, what if you don't get a job because of these questions? But let me ask you a question. Do you really want to work with a company or with people who don't respect your religious requirements, or they don't respect your religious needs? Absolutely not, right? So just as how they are looking for you to be a good fit for them, you would also need to make sure that they are a good fit to work with for you, inshallah. So remember, rizq is from Allah. The money you earn through the job is from Allah, but the job is simply a medium. Your rizq is written regardless of where it comes from. Inshallah, it will come to you if it has to, but Allah is your provider, so there is no barakah in getting that rizq through disobeying Him. There's no barakah in disobedience to Allah. So keep that in mind when you look for a job. If you don't get a job, now I did not get that train job, maybe due to different reasons, but if my questions in any way had played a role in me not getting that job, Alhamdulillah, that was not for me, and I'm happy with that. So inshallah, all the best for your interview, and make sure that you ask these questions so that you get a job that's fit for you and you're a good fit for them, inshallah. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and comment below any other questions that you think we should ask during these interviews, as well as make sure to share this video with those who are looking for a job so that you get rewarded if they benefit from it, inshallah. Until next time, live your beliefs and stay tuned to Bliifee.
So my dream for Jannah grows day by day, and I pray to Allah to guide me all the way till I make it to His paradise.